Welcome to the Insert Philosophy Here podcast. Inserting the principles of philosophy into real life. Donald Trump was in the news a lot yesterday, all over the news yesterday, and that's understandable to a point. But what our corporate media never actually does, or even thinks of doing, is inserting any philosophy into news events. And that's what I'll do here. Yes, let's talk a little bit about Donald Trump. People here in Europe, where I live, knowing that I'm American, often ask me, when have things in the U.S. ever looked this bad? It's something that I have been asked for the last 6 to 8 years, ever since Donald Trump and his run for presidency came to the fore. To the question, has things in the U.S. ever looked this bad, I always reply, 1968, to name just the most recent time. But I do understand people's consternation and concern. Things do look bad in the U.S. The rise of the right and Donald Trump and the erosion of American integrity and the political system causes people to ask what's going on. And a lot of people will say, especially in the left in the United States, Trump is why things are so bad. But that's too easy. Reality is always more complex than people realize or want to admit, and nothing is more complex than human society. America's problems run far deeper than the bumbling buffoon that is Donald Trump. He is a symptom. Hear me out on this, because this is important. To the question, is the U.S. falling apart, or is it headed for some sort of civil war? Well, first off, yeah, it is sad to see what's going on in the U.S. It's been rather difficult to watch from afar, and the pandemic vividly exposed the U.S.'s structural flaws and social fault lines. Income inequality, white supremacist violence, climate crisis, runaway corporatism, and the siloization of Americans into tiny little political ideologies means that civil conversation is all but dead. The United States is now an unsettled landscape, and few, if any, American leaders are remotely able to deal with the many problems. And yeah, about poor leadership, yes, especially Trump, yes, that's a problem. Trump was a terrible president, and worse, a terrible human being. He still is. I need not run off a litany of his many faults. But all partisanship aside, the political sniping that dominates America these days is not only non-productive, it is actively harmful. No one benefits from childish memes about Trump and his allies, or Biden and his allies, or Democrats or Republicans. Such attacks are just about all that we hear anymore, including from politicians. There is no actual political dialogue left in the United States. America isn't solving its problems because the leaders are more interested in blaming their enemies than in solving problems. Is the United States falling apart? Is Trump the problem? Well, let's look at this philosophically. First, let's take a quick quiz. Question 1. Is Trump a liar? Question 2. Is Trump a greedy, narcissistic businessman? Question 3. Does Trump live in a privileged bubble detached from reality? If you answered yes to these 3 questions, you are correct. Okay, now let's take a second quiz. Question 1. Is Trump the first politician to lie? Question 2. Is Trump the first greedy, narcissistic businessman? Question 3. Is Trump the first to live in a privileged bubble detached from reality? If you answered no to these 3 questions, you are correct. Anything else means you're in some sort of denial and trying to advance some other agenda other than truth and honesty. The purpose of these 2 short quizzes is to steer the conversation away from Trump to the much more useful topic of the social system that created Trump and enabled him to become president. Trump is a symptom of a much larger set of problems. That's the takeaway message here. Now you may respond, but Trump is exceptional. Yes, but only in being exceptionally open and blatant about what he is. Consider the possibility that Trump is no more and no less than a somewhat more dishonest, narcissistic, spoiled man-child who has a whole lot less impulse control. So then what is the problem? Because yes, I'm saying Trump is not the problem. He's a symptom of a larger problem. So here's something to consider, something more important. How is it that this dishonest, narcissistic, spoiled man-child who is Donald Trump was able to become president and may very well just be reelected president again? That Trump was president of the United States and could very well win re-election is less a statement about Trump than it is about the United States. How it happened and what it means needs to be considered. That's inserting philosophy, talking about causes, not just sensationalizing symptoms. Trump became president within a system. He's responsible for his actions, but it is a system that allowed, if not enabled, and empowered him to inflict his actions, his free will choices on the world. If Trump is wrong, then something is also wrong with the American system that enabled and empowered his wrongdoing. Because here's the thing. All of the problems that are today plaguing the United States were there before Trump. And they've been there a long time. Trump didn't create any of them. He simply is more shameless about exacerbating and exploiting America's problems, its deep-seated, entrenched, systemic problems. So let's talk about what's wrong with Trump, what was wrong with his presidency, and ask the deeply philosophical question, are they at all new? Well, racism? Yeah, Trump is a racist, no question. But did he invent racism? No. The United States has had racism since its inception. Don't forget, never forget, the U.S. Constitution enshrined black people as 3/5 of a person. Remember that? They still teach that in schools? I certainly hope so. Second point, sexism? Well, yeah, of course Trump is sexist. And of course also, sexism has been endemic to the United States since its inception. Of course, every country in the world is also guilty of sexism and probably racism also. Third point, hostility towards immigrants. Yes, Trump ran, perhaps more than anything else in his first election campaign, with the theme of hostility toward immigrants. But the paradox is that the United States is indeed a nation of immigrants, but each group of immigrants were hostile toward the next ones. The history of hostility toward new immigrants from old immigrants has always been there in the United States. Fourth point, neglect for the environment. Again, a huge deal for Trump. Some of the earliest things that he did after he was elected was dismantle environmental protections. But Nixon, yes, President Richard Nixon, created the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, 50 years ago for a reason, because neglect for the environment was huge then. And this has been an ongoing struggle. You can go back to Henry David Thoreau and Muir and many others, Audubon, who were talking about the need to stop neglecting the environment many decades ago. Was Trump corrupt? Yeah, of course Trump was corrupt. Power corrupts. It corrupted many presidents. It corrupted many administrations. Nearly every single presidential administration in U.S. history. Look it up. There's a good Wikipedia article on that. Not that I recommend Wikipedia in general, but for listicles of historical events, that's a good one. Look up an article on corrupt presidential administrations. Trump, of course, famously, was very alienating to other foreign nations. Was that new? Certainly not. The idea of America as a kind of fortress North America and all the other doctrines that went with that, manifest destiny and the American continent was there many years ago. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, captured it when he said, "America has no permanent friends or enemies, only interests." The United States has a long history of simply using and exploiting other nations for its own interests. Then there's Trump's denial of science, which we saw writ large during the COVID pandemic. That, too, has a long history from other U.S. presidents. Hostility toward the working poor? Yes, Trump had that, but you can't possibly believe that that's new. Now, Trump's Twitter misbehavior? That does seem to be new, and I'll give you that one. But just imagine if Nixon or Reagan had a Twitter account. That does boggle the imagination. The point is that if you are honest and not blinded by rank partisanship, you have to admit that the evils of Donald Trump, and again, I'll never get tired of saying it, Donald Trump is a corrupt, nasty human being. But these evils are manifestations of long entrenched evils. Trump is simply a symptom. I don't for a second suggest that we not oppose Trump's successes, but unless you are willing to oppose the injustices that are entrenched in the United States political and legal systems that enabled Trump and continue to enable Trump, and the media that continues to enable Trump, and focus all of this attention and all of this energy on anything Donald Trump says or does is top headlines, in the end, as long as you go along with this, you are also enabling Trump and future Trumps, who just might be worse. And yes, that is something you do need to imagine. Someone could be even worse. So this is my open letter to those protesting Trump. They have for years, as well they should, and they continue to, as well they should. But this is my message to them. If you are angry about Trump and what he does, good. That means you have at least some ethical capacity. But what have you done to make the world a better place? And don't say you attended protests or posted your anger online. How worthless is that? That only made you feel better about yourself. That's all. Are you against Trump's treatment of immigrants? Then do something to help immigrants and refugees. Are you against Trump's stance on women? Then do something to improve the lives of women everywhere, and not just in the United States. Are you against Trump's environmental policies? Then do something to help organizations that act to protect the environment. Are you against Trump's efforts to roll back protections for workers? Then do something to help labor unions organize to protect workers. Are you against Trump acting like a crude big baby? Then don't lower yourself to his level by posting stupid memes or chanting stupid slogans. Anger is an energy, but unless you use that anger to do something positive with your anger, you are just wasting your energy. And to be brutally honest, you are no better than the MAGA crowd. The choice is yours. Join the right-wingers in being angry, immature name-callers, or act positively to create a better world. The philosophical attitude is to look at causes, deal with causes, and work for a better world. Thank you for listening to the Insert Philosophy Here podcast. Please subscribe and go to insertphilosophyhere.com to see my other offerings. You can support the Insert Philosophy Here project with a donation at ko-fi.com. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.